The Note Air3 and the Note Air3 C, they frequently come out as the best e-ink tablets that you can buy right now. The Note Air range is 3 generations old. This one has a Kaleido-free full color e-ink screen, and this one has your traditional black and white 10.3 e-ink screen as well. There's not a lot of differences otherwise, apart from the battery life being better on the Note Air3 than on the Note Air3 C. And the Note Air3 C has the Boox Super Refresh technology, which allows it to be the crispest and clearest that you can get in any e-ink reader. They are the best bang for your buck, the most versatile e-ink tablets that you can buy right now, and I strongly suggest that you consider them. You're in the right place. In this video, I'm going to dive deeper than I have ever before, and I'm going to show you all of the features that I possibly can in one long video. I am producing as well a user guide for these tablets as well, so if you are interested in that, then stay tuned and make sure you're subscribed to my channel. Within this, there are comparisons, there are feature demonstrations to help you make the most confident buying decision that you can. These are versatile tablets that can fit into your workflow because you can do just about anything you can on any other Android tablet here on them. That is not to say that that makes it the best for you. So make sure you do watch the whole video to make sure you know that this is going to have the feature set that you need and it's going to fit your workflows. So grab yourself a drink and a snack and share this video up to your big 4K TV, because I spend a lot of time making sure these videos look as good as I can and sound as good as they can. And don't forget to let me know in the comments what you decide to go for in the end. So I'm going back to the Note Air3 C. This is the productivity device that no one's really heard of yet. I'm still getting asked, what is that thing that you're using? And occasionally I'm asked, is that a Remarkable? And that's because the Remarkable marketing machine has been so successful in targeting my peers in the professional world. And there'll be a comparison between the Note Air3 C and the Remarkable 2 coming soon. Everyone knows what an iPad is, and I do think that that is a good professional tool, but it also has the association of being a bit of a toy. And professionals, they don't look good playing with toys in meetings. Also, in my recent comparison, I think I'd get the smaller one next time. And recently I was in a full staff meeting and we were all told to put our laptops away. Of course, the host wanted everyone present in the room and not checking their emails or sorting their PowerPoints for the next day. But certainly no one thought that I should put away my e-ink tablet. It looks like a notepad, you write in it like a notepad, but it can be so much more. And of course, I was in that meeting, I was writing things about that meeting into my digital planner. And then there's the benefits of the e-ink screen itself. And recently, having returned to the iPad as my planner for several weeks, there were loads of benefits there for sure, but I really just couldn't get by with using that LCD screen all of the time and every day. And yet, I am planning another in-depth comparison between e-ink tablets and an iPad. So I'm going to go back to the Note Air3 C. That is back from having used the Tab Ultra C Pro recently. And on the way, I'll bring my experience and I'll explain everything that you're going to need to know to use your new Note Air3 C, because I'm convinced that you're going to be thinking it's worth buying after watching this video. I'm going to show you everything you need to know to make sure you get the most out of it. You'll see that it's a very balanced device. And not just balanced in the way that the Supernote balanced in terms of ease of use versus being fully featured, and not just balanced in the way the Remarkable feels balanced in your hand, and not just balanced in the way that the Kobo Ellipsa 2E or the Kindle lets you prioritize reading in your professional life. This is balanced in all that it can do. It can do all of those things and does them all well. It can be all of those things to everybody. And in the e-ink world, balanced is brilliant. It's the best e-ink tablet you can buy right now. And coming next, I'm going to tell you why it is the device to choose over the other amazing Onyx Boox devices that you can buy right now. For instance, it's a real dilemma between the Note Air3 C and my personal favorite, the Tab Ultra C Pro. And by the way, if you were struggling to choose, Boox quietly announced the Note Air3, the black and white version. Whilst that's another option for you to think about, it's also an option which is $100 cheaper than the color version. And that makes it a really sensible price. Dropping just $100 to drop the color screen, that makes sense. Now, especially when you compare it to the competition. You see, this video is the result of extensive real-world testing. There are some amazing reviewers on YouTube, many of whom make extensive tests of these devices. And there are some lazy reviewers too, who just read the press release, whack it out of the box and show you around the user interface. All of my reviews are the result of using the devices for a minimum of 2 weeks at work. And this time I'm going back to the Note Air3 C to bring you even greater depth on how I find it can be used in my professional use case. And now I'm going back to the Note Air3 C to bring you even greater depth on how I find that it can be used in my professional job. I'm a teacher and I'm going to be using this as my planner, but also my hub for writing and for managing my resources. It's going to be my professional calendar as well as my emailer, and I'll be using it for writing these scripts for this YouTube channel also. E-ink tablets are great for planning and organization work. They're great for replacing paper notebooks. You can have basically limitless pages. But this particular family of e-ink tablets from Onyx Boox, they are the best because you can do just about anything that you can do on an iPad, Android tablet, or even on a laptop or desktop PC. I think this is the one e-ink company that many of you should choose. I think this is the one e-ink company that for many of you could actually replace your laptop. You can do anything that there's an Android app for. Sure, the one limitation is the e-ink screen does rule out video or photo editing, but apart from that, you're away. I love word processing on these devices. In fact, most of my scripts are written on Onyx Boox e-ink tablets. The Note Air3 C is the latest in the Note line with a 10.3-inch color e-ink screen, which is about the size of an ordinary piece of printer paper folded in half. It's slim and light, and it has a fabulous pen input, which is super fast and it feels like paper. It's a really mature design from a company that's been working on this form factor and working with e-ink for well over a decade. Boox devices come with a dedicated GPU, which does an amazing job of keeping the screen free from ghosting and giving you what previously wasn't possible: high refresh rates and clean, clear imaging. And now you can feel right at home here in a browser, using web apps, using productivity apps, or just reading your professional literature with full color figures and making notes directly on the PDF. The category of e-ink tablets is new and it's exciting, and it has a definite place in professional workflows. If you've yet to try one, then you must. And I've got loads of content comparing them here on my channel. Here, I'm going to focus on this one because it is the current most versatile. It makes it the one that I recommend most often to most people, because it's the one that fits into most workflows. I often talk about a scale of ease of use versus fully featured. And certainly Boox tablets are not always easy to use, especially if you're not really familiar with how Android works. But man, are they fully featured. I already know that I'm going to enjoy this. It's just a case of finding out if this is the form factor that will last longest. Is this the enduring device type? I know e-ink is here to stay, but is the Android e-ink tablet here to stay? Or are we really just on a path to e-ink on Windows, which is what I really want? So is the Note Air3 C actually the best Boox device? There were a lot of Boox devices released last year, and for me it's been a little bit of a journey getting to the point where I now say that the Note Air3 series is the device that I most often recommend to most people. It just fits with the most use cases. It's slim but powerful. It acts like a notepad, but then it can become your productivity tablet and so much more. But there are lots of reasons why it might not be your top tablet. Boox make such a range of different tablets that it might be one of their other tablets which will suit you best. In any case, the software is the same across the Boox lineup, and so you should learn loads about every Boox device from watching the rest of this video. So why am I going back to the Note Air3 C over all of the excellent Boox devices? This one's too big, this one's too heavy, and it doesn't give you enough benefits over the Note Air3 C to make it worth your while. Just an opinion and not necessarily mine. This one's too small, this one's too old, and it doesn't have color. Okay, it's absolutely fine, of course. But this is just the best that Boox have to offer right now. And it's the thing that will slip straight into most workflows. And it's going to be the one that I'm going to recommend to most people most times. And it is the one which can slip in and out of your bag most easily. And it's the one that still has enough screen real estate for most tasks that you'd like to do here on an e-ink tablet. That's the current Boox lineup: the Mini C, the Note Air3 C, and they've got the Note Air3, the black and white variation, the Tab Ultra C, Tab Ultra C Pro, of course, is the latest model, and the Tab X. And the one difference, the Note Air3 doesn't have the Boox Super Refresh technology, which they all have. So the black and white Note Air3 is the one that you want to go for if battery life is a supreme importance to you. So the Boox Super Refresh technology is one of the things that makes them great. And it's a dedicated GPU, which it actually speeds up the refresh and means that it clears the white space after, for instance, page turns or after app changes without necessarily having to do full screen refreshes. You can maybe also see a bit of a difference here that the color screens look a little bit darker, and they've all now got all of their front lights right off. And you can see the black and white screen here is that bit brighter, and you do therefore get better contrast between the black areas and the white areas. However, at this size, we now have a screen which does 300 dots per inch in black and white, and there's 150 dots per inch color layer, which is really nice for sort of filling in the gaps. If you look at the way these app symbols are rendered here, you can really see the best of that color e-ink straight away. But if you're someone that needs to read academic documents and they have color figures in them, they are going to be easier to distinguish. For instance, lines on graphs, areas of pie charts, diagrams like this one, they are going to be easier to distinguish what's going on this color e-ink panel. So there you have your choice. But that Boox Super Refresh technology on this Kaleido-free screen does come at a price. And all of these devices have worse battery performance, except for the Note Air3, not the color version, but the ordinary black and white version. And that's probably the reason why they have kept a black and white version in this lineup and haven't put the Boox Super Refresh technology into that tablet. Although I'm sure with the latest chipset, it's still going to give you a good experience of e-ink. And nobody was really complaining about Boox for ghosting with the previous generation compared to some of the other tablets that are out there. And those tablets that don't have the Boox Super Refresh technology, they are absolutely fine for reading and note-taking. So I would say if you're looking for somebody with just reading and note-taking in mind, then have a look at the black and white Note Air3. You should expect around 5 times longer battery performance without that Boox Super Refresh technology. The Note Air3 C though is the best balance of the bunch though. You get big enough to use apps, big enough to have a comfortable note-taking experience, it's big enough to read in most documents, and it's big enough for using split screen between, for example, a notebook and a document. Yet it's also small enough and slim enough not to be too much of a thought to put it in your bag. It's also the only one of the bunch that comes with a case that lets you stand it in portrait mode, which is a surprisingly useful mode to have. That's a great mode if you're having to type into one long document, or for standing next to a keyboard for your reference documents. And of course, it's one of the first of the lineup to have color. And when you really want to enjoy color content, you really do need to put up the front lights somewhat. See if we can go to Van Gogh's more mature, colourful period. Stay tuned for details of these optimization settings coming in the content soon. And it does require getting your head around all of the settings to get the most out of every document. Yeah, that's much better. He was almost lost. It's still a pretty new thing to the lineup. And although there's no pogo pins on the Note Air3 C for that always available physical keyboard, that typing experience you get on the Tab Ultra C Pro, the Note Air3 C is quick to pair with Bluetooth keyboard. And you could either chuck a really cheap and light one in your bag, or you could have a full-size one available at home. And typing will work just as well as it does on the Tab Ultra C Pro. So let's call up the comparison data, starting with the tech specs. So these are all available on eWriteable.com, and you can just pick and choose which ones you want to keep in the comparison table. You can see that the Tab X is considerably more expensive than the Tab Ultra C Pro there, or the Note Air3 C, which is the £500 there. Tab Mini C is less still, but it isn't cheap. Tab Mini C is in between the Note Air3, the black and white, and the colour version. They all have the Kaleido-free screen, apart from the Tab X and the Note Air3, which are on the Carter 1200 series. All of them have the front lights. They all have pretty powerful processors, but the Tab Ultra C Pro is the more powerful one. And this is a newer generation than the Tab X and the Tab Mini C. Storage and RAM are smaller on the Note Air series than they are on the Tab X, but they're the same as the Tab Mini C. So the Tab Mini C you should see as a mini version of this. Got a lot of the same benefits. Is the battery large enough? Well, the interesting thing is, although the Ultra C Pro battery is larger, you are getting about the same runtime on the Air3 C. And similarly with the Tab X, much larger battery, but you aren't seeing considerably much more time on that. I don't know whether there is actually something to do with the size. I know it's driving less resolution than the other ones are. I think there's something to do with the length of the wires perhaps in there, extra resistances. Generally, I think it's harder to power a larger device. All of them have speakers and microphones. The keyboard folio is only available with the Tab Ultra C Pro. And of course, I've discussed that the Note Air 3 does not have the super refresh technology. And that should mean that it has a better battery life than others. I haven't tried it yet. I'm not sure if I will get to, but I would predict that would be the case. All of them have Bluetooth. The very latest ones have the fingerprint scanner and an SD card slot as well. And only the Ultra has a camera of any type. If you want to use it as a scanner as well, there's a reason to go for it there. All the A5 devices are a similar sort of weight. Actually, the Tab X, although I've said it's big and heavy, is only 100 grams heavier for that increased size, so it doesn't feel like a massively heavy device when in use. And the Tab Ultra, because you're likely to want to keep it in its keyboard case to take advantage of that, it does feel like a heavier device because it lives in that case. And the Tab Mini, of course, is lighter, but it's nowhere near as light as its previous A6 generation. The latest Note Air 3, Note Air3 C and Tab Ultra C Pro have Android 12, whereas the previous Tab devices have only Android 11. And they have all the same software features as well. They're all now on the 3.5 software release. You can also share them all with Miracast to any screen that supports that. Excellent website. I am a little bit torn here, but the people have spoken. I'm kind of sure my heart is still saying Tab Ultra C Pro is the one for you. What I mean is, it's the one that I want. But actually it isn't as balanced, and it probably doesn't fit as well in a kind of tech combo, as I have to use my work laptop at work, and I probably can't get away with everything I need to do on this e-ink tablet. It's not really its fault, but there's certain softwares and all the integration with, you know, Wi-Fi networks and things that are just so much smoother about using my work laptop that they give me, that I have to really rely on that. And well, the Android ecosystem isn't really enough to support everything that I need to do at work yet. It doesn't sort of plug in and stream to my board because, of course, our school is set up by our technical staff to just run smoothly with the laptops. So this doesn't plug in and just stream directly to the board. And all of the boards at school don't use Miracast that I can use from this, so I can't get away with just using it for PowerPoints and things. And also, I can't just plug it into the OTG. And yeah, it would be nice, Boox, if you could add that feature, please, that we could just plug in a USB-C dongle to HDMI and share the screen that way, please. And sure, it is true that this size of screen isn't quite big enough for really truly switching between apps and using two apps simultaneously in every single app anyway. Not quite the same way as using all that screen real estate on a laptop or with an extended desktop like this one. But that's all on its way. E-ink for laptops, I think, is on its way. It's not there yet. And as I say, the people have spoken. The Note Air3 C is the more popular choice. And sometimes the more intelligent and more evaluative of us, we need to be able to admit when we've actually lost the debate. And that's what I've done. And now I concede that this is probably the more relevant device for more people. And so that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm doing this whole going back to it and using it for work for even longer than the initial 2 weeks that I did to evaluate it. And I hope that's going to be really useful to you all. I'm going to go much more in depth with my own use case and what I find out as I do so. For many of you though, it might be a pair of Boox devices is the best combo for you. And I think perhaps if money was no object, getting a Tab X and getting the Tab Mini C, that might well be a good choice. You'd still have the color for reading, you'd still have the color for all those apps, and you'd get the screen real estate on the bigger Boox device. And of course the notes sync across your Boox account. That being said, I haven't actually mentioned any of the smaller pure readers that are out there. So Boox make, for instance, the Palmer, which is a palm size reader, and that could go really well with the Note Air3 C, and that would make a really nice combo as well. They also have Page, which is a sort of Kindle Oasis size e-reader, and Poke, which is an ordinary Kindle sized e-reader. That might well be an option for you, a pocketable device and a color device, a device for your pocket and a device for your desktop. And you'll find real world reviews of all of these on my channel. And also recently I did a bit of an accidental durability test as I skated my Note Air3 C across my driveway. And I can tell you that it's definitely made out of aluminium. And the case itself did a reasonable job of protecting the device, but came off a little bit worse itself. But it's absolutely fine. I've had no problems with the way it's working, no problems since that little accident. The black and white Note Air3, it seemed quite underwhelming at first, but as we got used to it, we've realized that actually this suits a lot of people better than the Note Air3 C will. In this next section, I'll help you decide which is going to be best for you, the color version or the black and white version. Long story short, if you're just in it for reading and notes, there are very few reasons to need the color e-ink screen, and you'll probably prefer the longer battery life on the Note Air3. So So no, this isn't the glamour of the Note Air3 C and the Tab Ultra C Pro launches. I think I made about 5 pieces of content on one day in that. But this is an important release, and for many of you, this is the one you should buy. And you're telling me that in the comments. You're saying actually the black and white makes more sense for me with the longer battery life. Cosmic Black. It is a slightly different color to previously. It's more of a gray, which makes sense for the black and white version. And I feel more confident about this. I was really discussing and thinking about the Note Air3 C, where I have it on these settings, auto power off after one whole day and auto sleep after 30 minutes. Well, having those settings on the Note Air3 C where the battery life isn't as good, I was a little bit skeptical actually, and I'm thinking about limiting those. But on this, I think I'll probably get away with this longer time before it goes into standby. So here's an interesting point that I might want to consider as well. The 4 different reasons why you might get different power consumption. I think possibly multiple apps in the background that require networking or continuous connection. That probably is going on with me. So I tend to go for a navigation bar, and I do have, incidentally, a full setup video where I go through exactly how to set up your Boox device. I don't use the gestures myself. I find them to be a bit more distracting than otherwise. They sort of get accidental presses rather than being just useful. So there we are, I'm in. I'm just going to get logged in and signed up to the Wi-Fi. And I'll be honest, I can see that there's that lack of the Boox Super Refresh technology here. So most of the current Boox devices are using Boox Super Refresh technology, which clears out the white space. And just moving from one screen to the other there, I am seeing greater incidence of ghosting, or what they call image retention, which is okay, but it does take a full refresh to actually get rid of it completely on this device, whereas the Boox Super Refresh technology is actually doing sort of mini refreshes of the white space to clear out that ghosting. It's less intrusive that way, but that gives you a hit on the battery life. So because it doesn't have the Boox Super Refresh modes, it goes back to the older screen modes. These are screen modes that you will know if you're a Boox Note Air, Note Air 2 or Note Air 2 Plus user. Normal is the best for reading, it's the best looking display, but it is going to do full screen refreshes more often. The speed mode is going to do just that. It's still going to give you a high quality, but you are going to start to see some ghosting. That's generally going to be the mode that I'll live in, I'm sure. A2 mode is a faster mode, but with heavier ghosting. And X mode sort of skips a bit of resolution and gives you the highest refresh rate you can manage, but the image degradation is real when you go through that. So I would tend to live without that. The DPI setting is a useful thing only really if an app isn't displaying correctly on the screen. It's not sizing properly, so most of the time that's okay the way it is. And again, dark color enhancement. Generally, if you notice that you can't really see what's in an image because it's all too dark, you might want to put that down, or if the images look wash out, you can slide that up. There's not too much of an issue there either. And the nice thing about the Boox devices is that they remember your settings for different apps. So that's quite cool. So there we are, I'm all set up with the App Store, and you can see it's gone into, I think, X mode there, which it really doesn't need to. I'm gonna go back to speed mode and just live with that. But X mode, if you do need to see high refresh content, like you want to play Mario Kart for some reason, then you can go for that. So in my opinion, there are 3 reasons to buy this over one of the color Boox devices. If you want to save £100, it's basically £100 cheaper. If you know that you want the benefits of a great battery life. So I haven't tested out the battery life yet, but I do expect that without the Boox Super Refresh technology, the battery life will be excellent. And also if you want to avoid having to use front lights, because here you can see with the front lights off, you're still getting a good contrast with that screen. Well, if you've got a Note Air 2 or a Note Air 2 Plus, then I don't think it's that much of an upgrade. Perhaps you have one of those and you'd rather wait for a 300 pixel per inch screen to come out. This upgrade just makes sense in terms of there wasn't a black and white Note Air 3 yet. They released the Note Air3 C, that was the exciting launch, and this just brings up the Note Air 3 black and white line to the latest chipset, essentially. There's no point in them continuing to make a Note Air 2 Plus and trying to source outdated chips. But you see, it isn't just the lower pixel count on this screen which might make you want to wait for the latest screen. This is 227 pixels per inch, which is absolutely fine even for really small writing, but this is still the older generation. I believe this is a Carter 1200 screen and we're up to Carter 1300 now, and not only have they improved the resolution, so Carter 1200 is 227 pixels per inch, but Carter 1300 and the 1250 is 300 pixels per inch. Just turn Smart Scribe on so I can do that gesture erase there. But also it has a darker black point than this screen does. And also it has a faster screen response. Now I can tell you just using it now that it is perfectly acceptable. It's going to be in the 20 millisecond range, but it isn't going to be that lightning quick that we used to on devices with the Boox Super Refresh. So you're going backwards essentially in terms of how quick that screen response is, that latency essentially. But I'm sure that if you've no need for color, if you know that you're going to spend 90% of the time in books or making notes and not very much time in the apps that you can download onto this device, then I think this is probably the better choice for you. So buy with confidence. There's a link in the description. I'm going to go ahead and download Chrome. And normally installing lots of apps does sap the battery quite a lot first time out. And I'm also going to go ahead and download CPU-Z to inspect the innards. Yeah, it does look to be the one we were expecting. Snapdragon 665, 2.4 gigahertz across all 4 of the power cores and 1.5 gigahertz in its efficiency cores. So very fast and up-to-date processor. And the same internals as the Note Air3 C with 4 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage, but also has that expandable TF card slot. So you can put lots of media on here, lots of books you can read for the rest of your life on 2 terabytes that you can expand it to. Come on, Emma. So let's just go through and try out some of those screen modes. See, it's defaulted to speed mode, which probably is the best mode for a browser. The normal mode is actually doing quite well in this browser. I was expecting it to be refreshing more often. There we are. So what it does, it allows you to scroll, and then when it stops, it does a full screen refresh to clear that white point. Whereas a Boox Super Refresh technology would clear that white point without having to do that. That's acceptable though. Regal gives you the very best at any time, and that's only really for where text or you want to just work with one image on the screen for a long period of time because it's going to be updating. And as you can see, it doesn't scroll as smoothly. Speed mode is your normal mode for browsing. It isn't really bothering to do that full screen refresh as often. It will eventually when it decides it's had enough, and you can always do a refresh on demand with this little button here. A2 mode is faster still, but you're now going to see much more ghosting. And then X mode is something that I would never use really. You can just see the contrast goes, the resolution goes, it just doesn't look anywhere near as good. You get heavy ghosting in that mode. So let's go ahead and test out the typing. So I'm going to switch Bluetooth on and I'm going to hook up the Keychron K3 here. And this is one of the things that if typing isn't very responsive because of that lack of Boox Super Refresh technology, then that's something that maybe would be a bit of a deal breaker. Because, well, last night on the Note Air3 C, I had a lovely little session. I was sitting on the sofa. This was propped up in its portrait mode, which is a really nice use of this case look. So it was propped up in portrait mode on the coffee table. I was sat with the Keychron mechanical keyboard in my lap. That was really nice. It does have its own text notepad now, which you can do up to 5,000 words in here. Yeah, that is perfectly responsive. I can also choose to not show the on-screen keyboard and the physical keyboard is active. Although you might want to use a mix of voice typing and this on editing as well. So it has gone into A2 mode there. So I wonder how it fares in speed mode. It's not a surprise at all. It is by no means unusable, but it is a little bit slower than the Note Air3 C in terms of the screen response. It is a little bit slower in the speed mode, and I'm guessing in normal mode. It's okay actually, but it does this weird kind of thing where it kind of is doing more than one character at a time. So I think the A2 mode was the correct choice. See, now I'm getting all this ghosting. There is a keyboard shortcut for screen refresh though. So if you're a confident and accurate typist, I don't think you have any issues with that. Slightly slower screen response with the typing than on a Boox Super Refresh device. But if you're a normal typist, then I think you might find that a little bit jarring. It's usable, but if that was your main use case, then I'd suggest go for one with the Boox Super Refresh technology. The other device which is providing a kind of looming spectre over whether you should buy the black and white Note Air3 is this, the Boox Tab X, which does have the Boox Super Refresh technology and so has a much faster screen response. So for typing, I think this might be the way to go with this larger device. If this had a case that could stand up like that, then that would be something. This can stand up in its landscape mode though, which would be quite nice. Cool. There has been a lot of innovation in e-ink technology in the last year or so. And I think perhaps we can forgive Boox for bringing out seemingly 1,000,001 devices, seemingly unplanned cadences throughout the year. But now this is a mature design and the Note Air lineup is quite a predictable lineup. So perhaps they need to settle into a more measured pace of refreshing this series. Give us a Note every 3 years maybe, and then a new Note Air Plus a year later, and maybe a color device a year after that. That seems a bit more like it. Well, we'll see, but let's just enjoy anticipating what they're going to do next. It is great technology, and yeah, if you're wondering, e-ink is that good. It does make a big difference in your personal or professional life. And let's also say, I don't know what e-ink themselves, the company that makes the e-paper screens, has up their sleeves. And if they bring out new technology, of course, Boox are going to want to very quickly respond to that and make sure they've got the latest screen tech in their devices. So whenever that 300 dot per inch screen comes out, and is available to anyone apart from basically Amazon Kindle and it seems a couple of other Chinese facing companies. When that comes out and is available for this market, then I'm sure they'll do a Note Air3 Plus and that will have that in. So last night, for instance, I was typing on the Note Air3 C. I had a great experience on it, mostly using the ambient lighting with just a little touch of that warm front light. It was amazing. And what was best about it was that I wasn't wired and bleary-eyed when I actually eventually went to bed. So what you're losing here on the Note Air3 compared to the Note Air3 C is essentially just the color and the Boox Super Refresh technology. And that uses that GPU to clear up that white space. Let me give you a for example. Put them both in a similar mode, so speed over here and fast over here. You can see just how many more frames per second you're getting out of the Note Air3 C. That technology is brilliant, but it is very power hungry. And most of us think that that's the reason for the reduced battery performance in the latest generations of Boox device. Let's see how it actually performs in practice if we do get a much better battery performance with the Note Air3. And one way I'm trying to conserve the battery on color e-ink screens is I'm trying to run the front lights right off as much as possible. It is usable, but generally if you want to look at some content where you want the colors to really pop, then you will need to run it with the front lights about 50% or slightly higher on, and somewhere in the colder region anyway. Whereas as you can see, without a front light at all, this is looking really, really clear and contrasty. I'm going to spend a little bit of time with it now and do a drawing on it, and then I'm going to switch over to it for 2 full weeks at work to see how it really performs. Hopefully I'll have good news for you on the battery front. And I'm really wondering how much I'm going to miss that Boox Super Refresh technology. Is it something that I've got used to and I just cannot live without now? And yeah, I'm going to have a look at the Note Air3 C side by side with the Note Air3, and I'll do that in more detail, but I think I'll make that another video. The Remarkable 2 has been around for 3 or 4 years now, and well, it still seems compelling for a lot of people. And it's still a comparison that I get asked for quite a lot. So let's dive in and see how the Remarkable 2 compares to the Note Air3. Maybe you've been brought here by a targeted advert from Remarkable and you thought to yourself, I'll do a little search here and see if there's any other alternatives to Remarkable out there. And Google's brought you here. Well, welcome. I'm Kit and I make content comparing e-ink tablets, among other things. And I'm going to show you the main alternative you should be considering to the Remarkable 2. That is the Onyx Boox Note Air3 C. It's not the only alternative to Remarkable, and I've got a good few comparison videos where I take you through the full range of e-ink tablets you can get right now. But this, the Note Air3 C, this is the main one that you should consider before you spend about the same amount or maybe even more on the Remarkable. I can say for most of you, for most use cases, it's a no-brainer. Get the Note Air3 C over the Remarkable 2. However, the Remarkable 2 is a very straightforward device. It's very easy to use, and its lack of features is actually marketed as a strength. But if you're in any way technologically minded, you'll be right at home here on the Note Air3 C. And with its relatively open version of Android, you'll be able to do just about anything you might wish to right here on the Boox Note Air3 C. And don't forget there'll be links in the description when you do decide that the Note Air3 C is the way more sensible choice for your e-ink device. I've been sort of expecting an updated device from Remarkable anytime soon, but maybe the Remarkable 3 isn't imminent. They've just paid iJustine to call this the new Remarkable 2, based off what? A few basic updates, a change to the title font and the pen tools layout, and every now and then we get a small change to the UI and very little extra functionality. It took them a long time to even introduce something so basic as tags, and they are not as comprehensive as they could be, especially when we compare it to something like the Boox or even something like the Supernote. The speed of updates for Remarkable is not thick and fast, and they talk about you keeping the device for a long time, and that's a good thing, that's to be applauded. But it was a long time before we even found out what those pogo pins were for. I think the device was about 3 years old when they invented this, the keyboard case. This video and this comparison is based on my knowledge that I've gained from using both of these devices in a real world professional use case. And I have loved using both. I've put a great deal of thought and time into testing these devices, and I've returned to these devices after updates and see how the platforms have changed and evolved over time. So these are opinions that you can trust and which are based on long-term use. I'm not sponsored by either of these two companies, although it must be said Boox has sent me this device for review. I bought my own Remarkable 2. The most obvious difference on starting the two devices up is going to be straight away you're going to notice the Boox device has color. And that clearly is a thought, as I do get asked about it quite a lot. Color is new and it's not something that we're used to on e-ink just yet. It's one of my favorites actually. And it's not working in a very e-ink sort of way, as it's not actually individual capsules filled with pigments. The color is provided by a sort of reflective LCD layer, but it is worth having. Hopefully color e-ink will improve to the point where it really does look as good as printed images on the page. And you do, to get a really good look at color, you do have to run the front lights quite high and reasonably cold. And that's another comparative point. There are no front lights on the Remarkable at all. The color is really worth having. And that being said, even the black and white Note Air3 will still have so many benefits over the Remarkable, and it will be cheaper than the Remarkable. And you'll still get the totally not weird or not new feature, the idea that you can install all your own apps, any app that you could possibly wish for, from the Google Play Store, just like you can on any Android device ever. But which for some reason Remarkable wouldn't want you to do that. I guess because you'd get distracted because you're not responsible enough. You can't be trusted to install your own apps. On Remarkable, the highlighter is colored, and these highlights, they do show up that color when you view this file on a computer screen, when you export this as a PDF, or when you view it through the cloud apps. And you do get different colors in the ballpoint pen, but not in the pencil or the brush. And the white can be useful, of course, because the white will show up as a white mark rather than a transparent mark if you export this as a vector. And they would also show up as those colors were you to screen share the device via the Remarkable app. I do want to touch on one or two issues with instability, and I hope that this has been from porting the Boox UI from Android 11 to Android 12. And I do expect Boox to address that instability issue that I saw in my full review as the user logs come in. And they are mainly from very esoteric things like for instance, recording and typing at the same time, or annoyingly, when drawing for a very long time, making lots of marks with the new tilt and pressure sensitive brush pen. And this is something, this pencil tool, if I use this for a long time, I can repeat this reliably, that I will get the device to freeze up. But in my actual use case at work, I didn't notice this at all. And in the latest update, Boox have brought some really innovative things. For instance, that Smart Scribe feature where I can just scratch out to erase. Now both are very thin and light, with the Remarkable just shading it. I think there's about 0.5 millimeter in it. And the reason why the Boox cannot be as thin as the Remarkable is because it's got that front light. And frankly, I would rather have the front light and that tiny bit of extra thickness than not. Even if I am now trying to run everything that I own with a collider-free screen with the front lights off as much as possible to conserve battery. I would rather have it for those darkened rooms or for those times when I really want the colors to pop when I'm looking at certain types of books. And look at the difference between the two screens with the front light completely off here on the Note Air3 C and there being no front light at all on the Remarkable. You can see that that's a clear win for the Remarkable. Well, it's a clear win for the black and white e-ink screen over the Kaleido screen. It is a lot whiter. However, this screen is a 227 pixels per inch screen and the Boox screen is a 300 pixels per inch screen in black and white. You can really close see that there is some slight pixelation there, which you can see less of here on the Boox screen. But you can perhaps also see that graininess given by the color layer, which is always present at all times on the screen. So the blacks do give you really crisp text here, but you do lose that nice clear white background. And to match them up, you need to go pretty high on the front light there. That being said, with e-ink, choose to seek out times where you can read next to open windows and enjoy natural light. And then there's no issue whatsoever with the darkness of this screen. It looks perfectly fine. And should you choose that you would prefer this screen, then you can get a Note Air3 C with essentially the same screen. And you'll save $100, which will definitely put it as cheaper than the Remarkable 2 with all its accessories. And of course, that's only if the screen darkness is a real deal breaker for you. And I can assure you that it really hasn't been in my use case. And so you've got that choice in the Boox line now, the Note Air3 for a much brighter screen with incidentally a much better battery performance because it doesn't have the Boox Super Refresh technology. Or you can get the full e-ink color experience with Boox Super Refresh, which I must say is excellent for being able to use all of the different apps that you might like to use on an Android device. And that is something to come back to, is the battery life on the Remarkable 2 is fabulous compared to the battery on the Note Air3 C Color. The Note Air3 C itself will have a better battery performance than the Color version, but nowhere near as good as the Remarkable. The Remarkable reliably will last for 2 weeks using it for note-taking every day, whereas a full day using productivity apps on here might be pushing it for the Note Air3 C. I personally get around 3 days generally, and that's for occasional notes in PDFs. Also, I use the PDF reader as my note taker at work, and I do quite a bit of browsing and use web apps and things like that. And of course, on the Remarkable, you can't do much more than that. You can read and you can take notes on the Remarkable too. And they sell that as a benefit. They sell that as a distraction-free device. Now, I'm not convinced of that. However, there are plenty of people that suits. And users of Remarkable, they frequently report they like the fact that Remarkable doesn't try to be more than an e-ink notebook. And that's the thing. Commentators frequently point that out to me. There's no point, they say, in comparing the Remarkable 2 with an iPad. And I have that video. They're just intended for different purposes. Well, in that same way, so are these two devices. And perhaps it would make more sense to compare the Note Air3 C with an iPad, in which case there might even be a case for you to own both of these two devices. I am currently using both of them. The Remarkable 2 just lives on my desk and it's for my little desk notes, just things that I need to get done whenever I'm sitting at my computer desk. And this is a device that I take with me to work and use for all of those things. Well, that comparison with the Note Air3 C and an iPad, that'll come soon. So I'll just bring up eWritable.com on both the devices. Oh, I can't do that, of course, on the Remarkable. So I'll just bring up eWritable.com on the Note Air3 C and bring up the comparison charts. And look, even if I send this web page to the Remarkable, which is a pretty good use case where you can actually take any website at all and send it directly to the Remarkable, you should be able to see it's probably not as easy to read on this device without the color e-ink. It's not coming through at all. So that was a little bit more hassle than I expected it to be. I wanted to use the excellent Send to Remarkable button here on the browser, and you can send any web page directly to the Remarkable. It comes through very rapidly. Unfortunately, it only comes through with text and it won't even send those tables. So good for reading an article, but it hasn't even brought in the titles of the web page at all there. So I've sent it through as a PDF. I've sort of screenshotted part of it just to give you the comparison there. And okay, that was just drag and drop across to the web app there. But you can see hopefully that the clarity is much better here. And it's much easier to read the different color kind of things and understand, well, you've got this red for no and green for yes. It's just a much better experience of reading web pages on the color e-ink display. And distinguishing any charts which are kind of designed to be displayed in color is going to be easier here. So if you see yourself reading anything with lots of color, with charts of graphs, anything like that, then do err on the side of the color e-ink screen now. Color e-ink is more than just a nice to have now. So although I like the Send to Remarkable feature, and it's a really nice way to read things that you find on the internet. Just one click and very quickly that is there on your Remarkable. It's much better to be able to view the live web page and interact with it. A good feature of it that I do enjoy though is that you can now annotate on this because it has become a Remarkable notebook rather than a PDF. And of course you can't annotate on this web page. I could of course save this as a PDF and then I could annotate away though. I'd rather have the live web page. It does do a good job of filtering out the adverts though, but you never get any of the figures tables or otherwise when you send to Remarkable this way. So let's have a look if there are any other major differences that I haven't kind of covered already within this comparison table. It does say that the Remarkable is cheaper, but of course that's without all of the additions like the folio case or the pen. The premium pen itself is 120 odd quid. They chuck in perfectly usable Boox Pen Plus and the case for the £500 for this device. Obviously the Remarkable doesn't have the colour and doesn't have a front line. The Boox Note Air3 C doesn't have a keyboard folio and the Remarkable 2 does. So I am going to put that in the positive pile for the Remarkable 2. That's one of the very few things hardware-wise where the Remarkable comes out on top. You can see double the speed, quadruple the cores on the Boox device, much more storage. You need that for apps here and RAM. No speakers, no microphone, no G-sensor, no Bluetooth, no fingerprint scanner, no SD card slot, no cameras or anything like that on either of them, of course. And the weight, actually the Note Air3 C is slightly heavier, but the weight is pretty similar. This is running Linux, so it's its own proprietary thing. You can't even load on your own apps yourself. I would say one thing here, the tools actually on the Remarkable are excellent. And the pencil tool, for example, is one of the best. You see the range of different marks I can get out of that pencil tool. It is excellent. All the different file formats you can actually read on here. Remarkable does have screen share though, but it's not in the same way. It doesn't have mirrorcast. So yeah, looking down that, just generally the hardware wise, the Boox is way ahead. So objectively, this Note Air3 C is the far better tablet. It's streets ahead. But there is something which is a subjective element. There's something about all of these e-ink tablets that are aiming to give you that same kind of tactile quality as paper. So you can't get away with that subjective part of your decision making. And there is something lovely about the Remarkable, but there is also something lovely about the Boox device. And I would say that pretty much every single Boox device is a little bit behind the Remarkable 2 in terms of that aesthetic way that it feels to actually use the device. Not so far that you would want to kick out all of those other massively objective benefits. And they aren't far behind. Maybe the writing feel is a little bit less pleasing on the Boox than on the Remarkable. There's that tiny bit thinner, but of course that thinness is completely gone if you go ahead and you use it in the keyboard case. But of course, the keyboard case is one of the absolute standout features of the Remarkable 2 now. But it's an odd feature because why? For something which is all about that marker, it is the Remarkable. Now they've turned it into something which clearly is designed for writers. And I don't mean necessarily people who are publishing their writing into magazines or books, but for people who need to write their information and write in this way. It's expanded the use cases, but it has also made it less clear the focus and the specific use cases of the Remarkable platform. So it's a very interesting change. I look forward to seeing what they do later as they develop their line of products. And there may be some of you, maybe many of you actually, who the joy of using an aesthetically pleasing device outweighs all of these other benefits that we've discussed today. And maybe some of you, the look of the Remarkable will just shade it for you. But the Note Air3 C is a really beautiful piece of technology. It is a really lovely piece of design. And I would encourage you not to disregard it, not to see it as being the less attractive neighbor and just pick the Remarkable based on that. Early Note Airs weren't my favorite design, but now they've really grown on me. As they've toned down these colors, they're really attractive. And their cases are really good quality and a real pleasure to use as well. So for many of you who have maybe seen a lot of the marketing materials, a lot of the really attractive advertisements that they make about how Remarkable can fit into your professional life, I would really encourage you to consider in the cold light of day whether Boox would actually be the more suitable device for you. I'm sure it is for most people. You've got to decide for yourself, of course. The Remarkable was the very first of its type with this specific design language, and it has been imitated quite a lot. But just like Apple, once all the other tablets and phones start to look like the iPad and the iPhone, it's time that they make a design change themselves. Apple changes the way that their phones look, and all of a sudden everyone wants the latest Apple device. And it takes a while for everyone to catch up, not just with the technology, but with the design aesthetic as well. And we're very much due that with Remarkable now. We're very much due a change in the design aesthetic of this device. And then there's the price. For an objectively worse device, well, for the package, you're going to be paying around 500 quid, depending on whether you go for the very premium folio, depending on whether you go for the Marker Plus or the ordinary marker. You can, though, and I'd encourage you to look at, you can get the device itself for £300 and only spend around 30 quid on a case and about 40 quid on a third-party stylus. And then you'd be around sort of £370. The whole device, case and pen for the Note Air3 C is £500. Now typing is a real strength of both of these devices. And sure, I think if you can commit to using just one device and all of your written notes and words within the Remarkable platform and cloud services, you could get away with that. Sure, you could also consider the Supernote, and you could do those things on there. But if you have to access and also to be able to edit your documents anywhere on any device, then you need something that's going to let you access the cloud services, and that's going to be the books in the e-ink world. I can type directly into any Word document that I have in the cloud on either mine or my work profile app. I can work directly into my Google Cloud, into the Google Docs app, or download and manipulate things, edit things directly within the Google Drive app. And there is a real benefit to the Note Air3 C for having this vertical screen mode. Yep, it's paired. So I can pair a Bluetooth keyboard with it really easily, and now I can type directly into a cloud file here in the Word app. And vertical mode looks really good for vertical documents. And that's something that is just not possible to emulate on the Remarkable. And even so, these files are still vertical files, and there isn't a kind of edge past here and here. So that when that same file is rotated, now you can see I've got this rather awkward notes that have gone off the edge of that notebook. This vertical mode is just a very natural way to see a written document. There's also this issue of having to export things from the cloud source on the Remarkable. So you get the great Remarkable desktop app. I'm sorry, this is the 20s now. And really having to copy out of a desktop app like this and then either email it to yourself or copy and paste it into the document you want to type in, it is a clunky workaround rather than working directly into the cloud sources. I am pleased to say that at least in the desktop app, they've got rid of this funny little symbol that used to be at the end of every single line, but that's still there on the phone app last time I tried. So you actually have to go through and delete these funny symbols that you get, which just mean line break in whatever the code is written for this Remarkable type. So having to copy and paste into different apps for editing, formatting, publishing from where you first made the text in the Remarkable, that is a workaround that I'm just not willing to accept today. I want to write directly into the app that I'm eventually going to publish the work from. If it's a Word document saved on my work cloud, I want to work into that Word doc, and I want to have all the changes saved automatically when I access that later on my work laptop. If it's a Google Doc which lives in my Google Drive and which I can edit anywhere on any browser or any app, and then I can just import it straight into another app like my teleprompter app, for instance. And I don't want to have to get the text there by emailing to myself or any other kind of workaround that I might have to do on Remarkable. I want to be directly editing the cloud copy. And although there are cloud integrations on Remarkable, at best, they are only one way. In other words, you can pull things down and you can upload things, but you cannot work on live copies of those documents. And although the Remarkable Cloud is pretty good, it has a phone app, a desktop app, and a web app. And if you could only live in that one bespoke cloud space, then you'd be absolutely fine. But most of us use more than that. Most of us are now used to accessing and editing our files from multiple locations. You can also screen share to the desktop app, but you can only do that within a desktop app which is signed into your account. So you couldn't do that on a shared computer, for instance. It works pretty quickly. It's quite cool because you could share that to a meeting. Now, in any case, you do need to be subscribed to the Connect services, which is about £3 a month for the privilege of sharing to a desktop like that. There are just so many more ways you can share your screen on the books. You can do it directly to the screen via Miracast, which is what most modern screens will accept directly sharing to, or you can share over your IP on things like Space Desk, or you can log into Teams or Zoom and share your screen through the meeting app, or even on our whiteboards at school that have a proprietary screen share app, I can download and install their app on the device and screen share that way. I would go as far as to say the Remarkable Cloud is better than the Boox Cloud. However, I don't really use the Boox Cloud because I don't really need to, except for syncing my notes and syncing my reading data to the cloud so that I can access that via the web app, or I can access that on a different Boox device. I don't use the cloud on books very much. I use the Google Cloud. I work in an app which has its own cloud storage. So the Remarkable Cloud is very good, but it pales in comparison with the Google Cloud or the Microsoft Cloud. The other thing to say that for full access to all of those cloud functions, you do need to pay for the Connect subscription as well on the Remarkable. Books give you 10 gigabytes of cloud storage for free. And for what you can do, which is really just store your handwritten notes and a few type bits, copy and paste out of that app, it's pretty limited really. And hopefully you can see that when I do copy out from the Remarkable app on my phone, I get these ridiculous symbols after every line. So who's got the patience to go ahead and delete and put each line onto a new line when you do that on your phone? I mean, that's just not good enough, is it? This is the 2020s, and rich text format has been around for maybe 4 decades, and it hasn't had those issues. Now, I've talked about comparing the Remarkable Cloud with the Microsoft Cloud, but of course, the Remarkable Cloud is £3 a month, and Microsoft 365 is about, I think it's £75 per year. But you are getting a massive suite of apps here as well. And I need those Microsoft Cloud apps. I'm already a paying customer for that. I need the Google Drive storage. I'm already a paying customer for that. So having to spend extra for the benefit of using the Remarkable, that does kind of sting. And the fact that I can't really use the Microsoft Cloud or the Google Cloud properly here on the Remarkable, that limits the benefits of this as a digital device. So there we have it, an objective no-brainer, but for some of you, you might need to follow your heart, and you still might desire a Remarkable. For most of you though, after that comparison, I think the choice is crystal clear. So here's a few more comparisons that have been requested quite a lot. And firstly, the Note Air 3 versus the Note Air3 C. In this part of the video, I'm also going to clear up an important difference about the way the two e-ink screens work. Is black and white for you, or are you a color vision person? I've got the Boox Note Air3 and the Boox Note Air3 C here, and we're going to do a bit of a side-by-side. Let's go ahead and get the technical differences out of the way. First of all, the black and white screen is 227 pixels per inch and has no BSR. And BSR is Boox Super Refresh technology. You'll see there it has to do a full screen refresh to remove the image retention, whereas the Boox Note Air3 C actually removes the ghosting or that image retention without having to do that full screen refresh. The color screen is 300 pixels per inch with its black and white layer and 150 pixels per inch with its color layer, and it does have this BSR. You can see there where ghosting was, it has now disappeared, but it's still retained here on the non-BSR device. Because of that, they have different sort of screen modes, but I've gone for something similar, which is the speed mode on the black and white version and a fast mode here. Let's go into normal and balanced, which are the two sort of equivalent screens. And you can see here it chooses to do a full screen refresh to remove that once you scroll, whereas the BSR screen just removes that without having to do so. I pretty much only ever use balanced here on the Note Air3 C, whereas I do have to choose between the two here, whether I want it to act in this speed mode here, which is perfectly fine for scrolling, and the ghosting is pretty well controlled, but it isn't perfect. Apart from that, they've got the same pen, they've got the same RAM, they've got the same storage, they're the same size, they have the same case exactly. They're pretty much the same device, except to say that the black and white version is $100 cheaper. And that might make your mind up for you if you don't really need the color. So let's look at how big of a difference the color and the BSR technology make to your everyday use of the device. There is a big advantage to the black and white books over the color BSR, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So firstly, the BSR, how big of a deal is that? I really think that it makes a big deal when you are using things where you might need to have faster refresh rates. If I go to one of the faster refresh rates on the older technology, you see the ghosting becomes really distracting. Whereas the faster refresh rates with this GPU-enabled Boox Super Refresh technology, they're still managing to remove that ghosting every single time. It's not perfect, however, and there is still an issue, and when you have large areas of color, you still see image retention in the color space here on the color screen as well. So now I'm in sort of the second fastest mode here on both of them, and you can see, I think, clearly the problem with the ghosting on the non-BSR screen. And actually it seems to be handling that ghosting within the color space there reasonably well. But perhaps you can just see, yeah, the mark there in the color space is not clearing out quite as well as it does when it's just clearing out the black and white. So if I show you now, here's the black and white drawing, bit across, you see it. Without doing a full refresh, it's really removed all of that ghosting. Here on the Note Air3, there it is, still retained there on the screen. Isn't that much of an issue because you can simply swipe up from the bottom, press the refresh, won't take very long to do that, or you can just live in one of the higher quality modes and have a more frequent refresh. In the color space, you can see there's more retention of the image than there is on the white space. It's very good at clearing black from the white space, but not so good at clearing lines from areas of color basically. So you can see here the same document in both the black and white and the color. Let's have a little look through that. I mean, is there any difference first of all in page swipe? They're both handling it perfectly well, as you'd expect with the same internals. Now, because it's just text, it isn't so distracting at all having that lack of the book super refresh. For just reading, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the black and white, in my opinion. However, if we look at a diagram like this, perhaps that does look a little bit better here on the color than it does in the black and white. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with reading it in the black and white there. If a lot of your reading relies on diagrams, graphics, things that require color to see differences, then I think you might enjoy the color screen that little bit more. But the bigger difference, most certainly, is that sort of distraction that you get when it has to do that full screen refresh to remove the ghosting. So in reality, I'd say there is a difference, but only really for users that are going to spend a lot of time either in browsers or reading a lot of color content or using very high refresh rate apps. If you're someone that needs mainly to read and read wordy documents, then I think black and white will be absolutely enough for you. The one more thing about the color is that you can actually use color highlighting and you can categorize your highlights by color. You can still use that in the black and white, but of course they don't all appear to be different colors. So you can still categorize them and think of them as color, but you won't be able to see the difference on the page. And the other thing about that color screen is, of course, without any front light, the general tone, the sort of background color of the color screen is much darker than the white screen, the black and white screen. If I zoom right in on this drawing, and this drawing was made on the black and white Note Air 3, you can probably see there's a slightly crisper line here on the black and white screen, but you might also be able to see there's this graininess in the background, which is from the color array there. The 300 dot per inch thing doesn't make that much of a difference in daily use, and because generally you're running the front lights higher to sort of try and balance out that background tone, you see I still haven't got it quite as light as the Note Air 3 here. Even with those lights well above halfway, I'm going to be having another thing drawing on the battery life with the color screen. The battery life is a big deal. The battery life is going to last you in the order of 10 times longer, I would suggest, on the black and white. I don't know exactly because it's a very difficult thing to quantify, but what other reviewers have found is that generally it depends what app you are using, and that the battery life is way more hungry on the BSR enabled Boox devices, and that's why they've chosen not to include that here on the Note Air 3. That is so that they keep an option in their lineup which does have amazing battery life, and I personally think that for many of you that will lead you down the route of the Note Air 3. So if you are umming and erring between these two devices, do have a long think about how important color really is to you. If it is just a nice to have for you at this point, and you're going to spend still quite a lot of time on your large screen phone or iPad or whatever else you might be using, I would suggest stick with the black and white and enjoy not having to worry about the charging, because I am constantly managing the battery on the Boox Note Air3 C. I would say I'd almost certainly in my use case get a full 2 weeks of use out of the Note Air 3 in just using it for notes and reading, whereas I would struggle to get more than 2 or 3 days with the color for notes and reading. And if I use a lot of apps on here, if I browse a lot, or if I use anything which is using that high refresh rate very regularly, I'd probably run out of battery in a day on this. And with all that being said, you're saving $100 to get the Note Air 3 rather than the Note Air3 C. For many of you, that'll be the final nail that seals the deal and actually lets you think, do you know what, black and white e-ink, it isn't broken, so why have they tried to fix it? And stick with the black and white. Because this Boox Note Air3 C is a £500 tablet. To bring that down to £400, all of a sudden makes it seem a lot more affordable. For notes, there is a clear winner. For apps, there is a clear winner. That should be how you're going to make that choice. And if you are a heavy app user, then perhaps you should have gone down the route of the Tab Ultra C Pro. Having that keyboard and the mouse will certainly help you there. But as a commenter on one of my videos suggested, perhaps they have made these three devices a little bit too close together. Perhaps they could have made this device, the Note Air 3, without the BSR with the black and white screen. The Note Air 3 C, perhaps they should have left the BSR out of that and actually just had the color, had the amazing battery life. And then for people who need to use the apps and are going to really take advantage and enjoy the Boox Super Refresh technology, the way that it doesn't have to do the full screen refreshes, perhaps that would have made the most sense only here on the Tab Ultra C Pro. That would have then made it harder to differentiate between who should buy the black and white or the color, and that would have been a choice just black and white or color, cheaper or more expensive. And then if you wanted to spend the extra money and get the very best experience of e-ink, as in the way the screen is handled, then you'd go up to the Tab Ultra C Pro. It would certainly have made the distinction between the Note Air3 C and the Tab Ultra C Pro that little bit more obvious. I hope that helps. There isn't a world of difference between these two devices. Frankly, they're both excellent. The Kindle Scribe is also an incredibly compelling e-ink tablet, especially if your main use is for reading. The household name and the price are certainly two important factors in it being the right choice for some people. But let's try and make a really objective comparison between the Boox Note Air3, the Boox Note Air3 C, and the Kindle Scribe. Can the Kindle Scribe challenge the Note Air3 C? The Kindle Scribe is so much cheaper. Half price is really your target. About £250 here for the Kindle Scribe versus $500 for the Note Air3 C. Do you get what you pay for here? Certainly are a lot more menus here on the Note Air3 C. And whilst I'm saying that, don't forget there is a Note Air3, which is a black and white version of this, which will save you $100 there and bring the price closer to being in line. Still, the Kindle Scribe is your inexpensive way into e-ink. The Note Air3 C, however, is your current best e-ink tablet. Firstly, both of them have 300 ppi screens. Not all 300 ppi is created equal, because this is 300 pp in black and white, but there's 150 in color, and that does change the look. Note, I have got the lights really quite high up here, so look how much darker it looks there. And that is because of the 150 ppi color grid, which you might just be able to see that graininess there causing that. The Kindle is a much whiter background, but you also might be able to see some of the image retention, which I can do nothing about. There is no option to refresh this screen. There is no option to change the way that the screen is handled. There is only, whenever it decides, as it did just then, to make a full screen refresh, that I'm going to get rid of that image retention. Whereas on the Boox, we have an option, a whole plethora of different screen modes, which you may or may not be interested in learning and how to manage, but it allows you to get rid of the ghosting whenever you like, and also choose an option which will actually remove ghosting automatically or do more frequent full screen refreshes. I can tell you that I prefer reading though here on the Kindle Scribe. For simple words, this is a better screen. That's now with the light right off on both the screens. But because of that color, there is a lot more that you can do here on the Note Air3 C. And depending on the type of reader that you are, the color might actually suit you better. So if you have to read documents with large amounts of color diagrams, then it might be the one for you. And I think we'd all love to see Kindle have a go at coloring. There's no point in even thinking about reading a book like this, for instance, the Van Gogh here on the Kindle Scribe. But that being said, it does still leave something to be desired here on the color ink. I've seen this one in Amsterdam. It's not getting close. And if I compare that to an OLED screen, well, to be fair, that isn't really cutting it either, but it's certainly getting closer to the vibrancy of the yellows. Yellow and green are not handled very well on colour ink yet. How that looks in Regal is better. Remember there being a lot more red. They are very different devices. It took me quite a while to realise that Kindle's actual open screen is a person reading under a tree. And I spent a lot of time at launch with the Kindle Scribe kind of deriding them for that crazy half-baked launch marketing materials. And for some of you, that will make a lot of sense. If you're looking for something to focus on reading and to be able to take a few notes directly on the screen, then this is an excellent device. Kindle did launch an integration with Microsoft Word. Well, that is one-way integration with Microsoft Word. You can send documents to this from Word. So if you have a Word file, it will export it essentially as a Kindle PDF type document, and it will send it here. And then you can mark up your document and you can save it and send it back to yourself. But that's where the integration ends. With the Note Air3 C, I can go into my own Word account and I can edit my own Word documents here on the device. Either using the on-screen keyboard, I can use the microphones that are built in, and I can use the text-to-speech modes. For Word and Office integration, it's a no-brainer. You can do just so much more here on the Note Air3 C, and you still get most of the benefits of e-ink. But then it comes back to the price. I've been recommending Boox to most people for some time now, but every now and then there's a person who asks for a specific recommendation, and it's clear that the price is the most major issue for them, in which case there is a clear advantage for the Kindle. People like students, for example, and anyone who just hasn't really got £500 to spend on a device that they're not quite sure of how much they're going to use it. They are sure they're going to read and make notes, but really £250 is their limit. And I'll often find myself saying that if all the books that you need are available in the Kindle form or in PDF, then you're going to have a great experience here. And I would say that it's the better reader by some distance actually, because not only do you have that excellent screen on a really focused device, but you also have amazing battery life and very quick startup times. So if I put both devices to sleep, but you can see I'm back to reading much quicker than I am on the books. So not bad at all. Very quick startup time though on the Kindle. And the battery is the biggest issue there. The battery will last you for weeks, maybe even months on the Kindle, depending on how much you read per day. With intense use, and if you use apps and other things which are the reason to buy the Note Air3 C above the Kindle, then you might even struggle to get a full day here. And drawing is very good on the Kindle too, although neither of them, disappointingly, are really focused in for drawing. I think that is a miss for a lot of the e-ink tablet companies right now. The Kindle Scribe has a lovely pen tool, one of the best pencil tools actually for getting a range of different tones. And the Note Air3 C, the Boox devices, do now have really nice drawing pencil tools. At least you do get layers here on Boox, which you can use to build up your different tonal ranges, but you can't blend them in any way. And there's no layers here on the Kindle Scribe. It's improving here on the Kindle Scribe, and I would suggest that if they really focus on this, they could go somewhere really quite far. Both of them do have a really nice textured screen, and they both use the same Wacom felt nibs, and so you've no issue there. Essentially, they're both equal in terms of how they feel to draw on or to write notes. The choice between these two really just comes down to your use case. There is a set use case on the Kindle, and you're kind of hemmed in on that. You don't have much of a choice. You're stuck in reading, annotating, and exporting your notes. That's a kind of frame of mind. And if that works, that's fine. You'll always be kind of switching between versions, that you'll always be sending to the Kindle and then emailing back to yourself rather than editing anything in a kind of realistic live way. Whereas with a Boox device, I can be editing a live cloud version of a file. I can be editing that in Google Drive or Word, and the edits that I'm doing here can be synced up immediately to the cloud version. That is really important to me for managing my files. If it's not such a big deal for you, then maybe you'd be happy on the Kindle. But there is one major trick that the Kindle has up its sleeve, which is the searchable PDF. Essentially what that means is you can use the handwriting recognition to take your handwritten PDF and save it as a PDF with those text recognitions built into it. And the PDF you get on the screen looks like the notepad, but you can copy the text and paste it out into other documents. Again though, you can't find that in the cloud, you have to email that to yourself. That is a bit of an old-fashioned workflow. So now, if there is such a talented team or a talented individual who's able to come up with innovative use cases like that, then there might be a real future for this device. And then I can recommend it to more people. But they've got that team and they're slowly bringing out these updates. Makes you skeptical as to whether we will really see this device take off for Kindle. Amazon need to see this as its own platform, a new platform, not linked directly to their Kindle readers, more than just a Kindle you can write on. And then it could become, and the next iterations of it could become an incredible device. It's easy to forget with all the capability of these Boox tablets that the primary use of e-ink is still reading. So let's look at the Kobo Ellipsa 2E, which is an excellent e-ink reader at this same size. And it might just be that what suits you best is an excellent reading device with some cool note-taking features. Choosing the right e-reader can be a challenge, and today we're making that choice a bit easier as we compare the key features of the Note Air3 C and the Kobo Ellipsa 2E. These are two popular e-ink devices, but one is really focused on reading and the other is focused on being able to do everything else. First thing, can you see how quick the Kobo Ellipsa is to wake up? Not bad, the Boox, but still, I haven't used this in a good few weeks and it just woke straight up and still has plenty of battery life, something to hang on to. Turn that brightness down a little bit. It's an excellent screen. Let's discuss who these two devices are best for. The Note Air3 C has a really sleek design and it's got an advanced note-taking feature. It's perfect for those who value functionality, if you're constantly jotting down ideas or notes. The color display also makes it a great choice, but some people think maybe it's got a few too many note-taking functions, and it does have a steep learning curve. Because of the color, it is great for people who enjoy graphic novels or children's books, or of course, more professional documentation that has color figures in it. The color screen, however, does change one thing, and you can see that really clearly on the screen here. Even with the front light right up, it looks quite a bit darker than the Kobo screen does. It's a bit much. But with them both right off, the contrast is huge. And again, that leaves you running any device with a color screen with much higher brightness, and that gives you another hit on the battery. On the other hand, the Kobo Ellipser 2E has a much longer battery life. It's got an extensive range of titles built into its library, and it's ideal for avid readers who enjoy spending long hours diving into different worlds. And with this current generation of devices, those that are denoted with the E, Kobo are going for the more environmentally conscious design choices of using ocean-bound plastics to design their case. And even though it is plastic, I really like that feel on your hands when you are reading. The Note Air3 is an aluminium unibody, so it's CNC'd, scraped out of one piece of aluminium, and all the components are fit right into this. Generally, the design and build quality is absolutely fabulous here on the Note Air3 C. But they're different design language, not one being better than another. And yes, of course, you can get a Kobo app on the Note Air3 C, and that's an important distinction to make. Yes, the Kobo's got a great library, but you can have that library and the Kindle library and any other library you might choose here on an Android tablet. So let's talk about the two displays. The Kobo Ellipser 2E does not have the cutting edge black and white display that the Kindle Scribe has, but that being said, it does have a very nice e-ink display itself. And black and white is sometimes better for reading than color is. Let's go into a book. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this, but it is only 227 dots per inch. The Kindle Scribe has a 300 dots per inch black and white screen. The Note Air3 C has a 300 dots per inch in black and white, and then also 150 dots per inch in color. So it adds that extra layer of color, and the text itself is crisper. This text was quite a bit smaller than it was on the Kobo, and it was still looking crisper. But reading isn't only about the crispness of the text, and it certainly is crisp enough from any kind of angle that you would normally be reading. There is nothing wrong with 227 pixels per inch. Okay, the Kobo Ellipser isn't a lot lighter, it's 40 grams lighter, but it does feel different. It does feel lighter in your hand. It feels more durable, you feel a little bit less precious over it. Generally, it's the better for reading. Unless, that is, you need to read things with color figures. For instance, here we are, a graphic which kind of makes more sense when you have the color information there as well. And when it comes to battery life, another important aspect of reading, the Kobo Ellipser really shines. It can last more than a week on a single charge, whereas the Note Air3 C, it typically needs to be charged every few days. If I was just reading on the device, I think I'd get 3 days out of it, because if I was just reading on the Kobo Ellipser, you might even get more than that full week, maybe 2, maybe even up to 3. Now the real difference is the stylus technology. The Wacom EMR stylus on the Boox is far superior to the stylus on the Kobo. You see, that would never happen on the Wacom EMR technology. Gosh, what's it doing? It seems to think I'm still pressing there. That's a bit frustrating. You do have a highlight button and an erase on the back here on the Kobo stylus, but Boox have got around the need to actually have one of those by making some really clever, what they call smart scribe features. Feels better, it's more responsive, it's just generally a better writing feel. Delete like this, select like this. Okay, highlight, you do need to select a highlighter. But you do have the added feature of being able to make perfect shapes each time. Kobo has some advanced note-taking features. If you select an advanced notebook, then you can do handwriting conversion, which is great. You can add drawings and diagrams. It will sort of conform them into nice shapes for you. You can have maths. Don't know what's happened there. And it can even handle some quite complicated maths. Did did okay there, but it's not perfect. And I really wanted to use that for a project where I was writing some physics questions, and I just found, unfortunately, it was a bit frustrating, rather than being the real help that I'd hoped it would be. I think if the pen was better, I would enjoy using that whole advanced notebook thing a little bit more. And for anyone who's serious about writing, I think that you really ought to look at the Boox devices. They go further, of course, and they do have a type of device which has a keyboard case. This is the Tab Ultra C Pro. Now, if you are someone who needs to do anything apart from reading and writing, for instance, drawing, artist, designs, anything like that, then the Boox device is the better option. You don't have many choices in your pens here. And importantly, if you want to draw, you don't have anything such as a pencil. The pressure sensitivity just isn't as smooth. Generally, any type of drawing is not going to be as good as you can do here on the Note Air3 C. This is a place that I really do enjoy drawing because of those excellent tools that you've got. And the added color, it's not perfect because you can only choose a certain limited palette of colors, but it is better than not having color at all for art. And that stylus, once again, it has pressure sensitivity and tilt, which the pressure sensitivity on the Kobo is not as good, and the tilt is not there. The Note Air3 C allows for handwriting recognition, and I think that one of the big differences is that now you can even do handwriting recognition in the background here, and you can globally use handwriting recognition to be your keyboard input essentially. Whereas the handwriting recognition on the Kobo is good, it's really accurate. In fact, it's one of the more accurate of them, but you can only do that in this advanced notebook format, and you have to therefore choose when you first open the notebook that I want to do a handwriting recognition notebook, and therefore the entire notebook will be like this. And so the whole notebook will be that handwriting recognition notebook. And it's not a very flowy experience. And what I mean is you keep getting interrupted because you have to double tap. You have to wait for it to recognize. It's quite quick for short bits of text like that, but you can imagine once you're doing a paragraph at a time or a few lines, it slows you down. And rather than just recognizing whilst you're writing the next bit, you have to wait for the dialog box to clear. It's just a bit annoying. And that's the thing. I think these devices are for people who want to use pens and have that analog experience and write on it like it's a sheet of paper, but also want that to integrate with their digital note-taking spaces, to be able to take the information off the device and into their cloud apps. And that again is where the Note Air3 C really excels, because you can have your apps installed on here and you can copy straight out to them, and then that goes up into the cloud. Whereas the Kobo, there is a Kobo cloud, I believe, but it's limited compared to all you can do here on the Note Air3 C. Why should you go for the Kobo? Well, I think you go for the Kobo if you need the battery life. If you're a more environmentally conscious person, then certainly it's still good an option. And I think lastly, price. Price might sway you towards the Kobo Ellipsa. £350 is the base price of the Kobo, £500 is the price of the Note Air3 C. So there's a big difference there, but the Kobo is not the cheapest of all of the devices that are out there. Have a look at the Kindle Scribe. One more reason to go for the Kobo though is if you are already in the Kobo ecosystem and you have a Kobo library and you want to stick with that and you want to add some note-taking features. Still excellent. If you're serious about writing, if you prefer to use different apps, then the Note Air3 C is the one for you. And if you want to save that bit of money, you can get quite close to the Kobo Ellipsa price by going for the black and white version. The black and white Note Air3 has the same screen, 227 pixels per inch screen as the Kobo Ellipsa does, and is £400. So very close actually in terms of price. And all you are missing out on is you're missing out on the color screen, and you're missing out on the super refresh technology. As you've heard, the super refresh technology, that really limits the battery life. So you're not only just missing out on the super refresh technology, you're adding that excellent battery life as well, which I think is worth it. I really love drawing on e-ink, despite some quite obvious limitations. But as a personal sketchbook, these things are excellent. There's something just quite joyful about sketching away on e-ink. So let's find out what the drawing experience is like here on the e-ink tablets. Let's go in depth. This is the Note Air3 and this is the Note Air3 C. I'm going to talk about them specifically for drawing today. Obviously there's one difference between these two, and that is that this is a black and white screen and this is a full color screen. And these are both e-ink tablets, and well, there are some specific limitations to e-ink tablets over something like an iPad, for instance. But what they have certainly got going for them is the accuracy of the Wacom pen and the feel of that nib on the paper feeling screen protector. I love the Note Air3 C and I love e-ink tablets for being a digital sketchbook, but I'm not sure I would recommend them for professional artists, unless just as a way to begin pieces of work and to keep a record of your visual thinking. I'm going to go ahead and draw something today. I think I'm going to carry on this theme of Vincent van Gogh drawings that I've been going on. And I'm going to draw this one, The Road to Tarascon. You do have a good range of tools for drawing, but nowhere near as good a range of tools as, for instance, on Adobe Fresco, which you can get on the iPad. You do have a pencil with tilt and pressure support. And you can work up through a range of those tools using layers, but there's no way to blend the layers in any other way than just to change the layer order. So what I would suggest you do is to start with a bottom layer with a pencil. Just going to make sure that I don't have Smart Scribe on, because it will think that shading is rubbing out, which I think it did earlier on. And then after you've got your basic plan out, you can make a new layer and then do a tonal layer. Gonna get a much thicker pencil and a sort of mid-tone first of all. Hope you can see it's got good accuracy and it's a nice feeling screen as well. I'm going to add some of the darker tones onto this layer as well. And then on top with this black and white, I'm going to pop an ink layer as well. And it isn't designed for painting and drawing this, and this is one of the issues with it. You're really using tools which are designed for note-taking, and a whole app which is designed for note-taking, and you're kind of just asking it to do an artistic workflow instead of it being designed for that. That is where Boox, I would love to see you bring out a full-on drawing app, just like they have on the Supernote, but I think you can go even further with your excellent hardware. Just when you compare it to the type of tool options you have on Adobe Fresco, for instance, it is just night and day. Impressionist brushes, different watercolor blending, all these different things, and just for a starter, being able to have different layer opacities would be really, really helpful. just use the brush tool lastly on a final layer to go ahead and bring a bit of texture to the leaves. And I'm actually going to place that new layer underneath the one that I've just drawn on. You joking? I think I managed to hit the back button there, and I've lost that drawing. And there's one tip: make sure you have the autosave function on. I don't know why it's not on by default. That's quite frustrating. A couple of other drawings that I've done recently. Of course, the Note Air3 C has the colors, but what I would say about them is they don't look the same on the e-ink screen as they will on any other type of screen. So actually here it is on the Big Me e-ink screen, and it looks really good actually on there. It doesn't look the same as it does on the e-ink screen on the Note Air3 C though. But if I pop that across to the main display here and show it to you on the video, you can see, I hope, that it really isn't the same type of colors. You do though have the vector information, and that is a vector PDF that I could go ahead and edit afterwards as well. Looks great on there. But you don't have anything like the control that you do on the iPad, and this, for instance, is the same painting, same Van Gogh painting copied on the iPad, and that does look even better. You've just got the choice of the brush textures, and you can really make something really quite special there. That's undoubtedly a better thing. And you don't really want that kind of frustration. You've created this kind of pastel looking masterpiece here, and then you go ahead and share it out with people, and it looks like that kind of splodge of color on the screen. These are full Android tablets, and any app will work on there, but what I'd say is that they're not going to work as you would expect them to do. They won't work as well as on an IPS screen or an iPad. Unfortunately, unless it's coded to work on an e-ink screen, the latency of the pen will just be terrible and you won't enjoy using it. It needs to use the Boox writing system to do the local refresh to bring the ink very rapidly to the surface wherever the pen is pressed. But perhaps a third party could use the Boox API to actually go ahead and make a full-on drawing app which had that excellent 20 millisecond response time of the Boox e-ink screen. So for now, I'd say this is a nice place to sketch, you know, a personal place to play around with your drawings, perhaps as a record of your design ideas, or at a push as a place to begin some art, maybe to do the outline of a sketch first before transferring to another thing like a Wacom or a Huion pen display to do all the inking and the coloring with all of the excellent pen tools and of course the full color display. Now the pen is a lot better for drawing on than many LCD tablets. It will blow any active capacitive stylus out of the water, and it will even give the Apple Pencil a run for its money. It is the same type of pen technology that Wacom licenses for use on Samsung devices. So Samsung S Pens are also Wacom EMR tech, just like this. So if you've used one of those, or if you've used an older Wacom display tablet, or one of the Wacom One line, the less premium versions, then they use the same Wacom EMR pen tech. It's excellent. It's only really going to be beaten by the Wacom pen tech that they reserve for their premium own brand pen displays and tablets. And of course the Huions, the XP pens, the Zen Slabs of the world, the drawing focused tablets. So it is way better than any capacitive or active capacitive stylus that you could get. Professionals though would be better off going with one of those for their artistic needs. Casual digital artists will be better suited to an iPad, but e-ink aficionados though, you'll have fun here. And it's nice to know that this most versatile of digital paper tablets can also be enjoyed for expressing yourself visually. There's something lovely about these devices, and this size of e-ink tablet is really useful, as I say, just for carrying around as your personal sketchbook. And I mentioned Supernote, of course, have their own drawing app, which is excellent. I've got a video showing you how that works here. But of course, you haven't got anything at this size yet in the Supernote ecosystem. iPad or e-ink? Well, it's a tougher question than it might seem at first, and I understand that for many of you it will be an obvious choice to go for an iPad over an e-ink tablet. But certainly for a day like today, sitting in the glorious sunshine in this garden room, reading with full sun on the screen, it looks amazing reading on e-ink tablets. You can't do that on an LCD screen. You can't enjoy the sun and have this amazing experience of reading. And of course, because these are Boox full Android tablets, working and doing any productivity task that you might choose to, on this glorious e-ink screen in the direct sunlight. But I hope that this next chapter of the video helps you get all your ducks in a row about which you should choose and for when. And let me know if you still have any more questions about that comparison between the iPad and e-ink tablets. The Onyx Boox Note Air3 C versus the Apple iPad. This is e-ink versus IPS. This is a comparison that, although it doesn't seem to make much sense comparing the e-ink tablet with a tablet with an IPS screen, an LCD screen, it's a question that I'm simultaneously told there's no reason to make this comparison, and I keep getting asked about it as well. All tech is something of a trade-off, but is the trade-off from IPS to e-ink, is it worth making? Is the trade-off, if you know you want e-ink to IPS, is that worth making? Now, just to say before we go on, the Onyx Boox devices come in all different shapes and sizes, and so do the iPad. So for example, this is a color 10.3-inch screen. There's also a black and white version of this, which has better battery life, but not quite as good looking screen. There is a version with the keyboard with that same color screen. There are bigger versions and there are smaller versions as well. Just as there are different sizes and shapes of iPad. This is the 12.9-inch iPad, this is the larger iPad. This is a pre-M1, the last generation of pre-M1 iPad, but it's still working perfectly fine, still managing all the apps with no problem at all. I think honestly now, if I was to go back, I probably would look at the 11-inch iPad rather than this big one. I'm going to compare them in 4 key areas with a focus on them as a tool for work. If you're looking for something to watch videos on or play games on, well, you already know which is better for that. E-ink, although it's got a lot faster, isn't going to keep up with the refresh rate on an IPS screen. I've been using them both for a long time. I've repeatedly gone back to the iPad, and I've been using the Air3 C as a relatively new device. I've been using it for months at work, and before that I've used the previous iteration, so I'm pretty well versed in both of them. It is the most balanced e-ink device. Well, what it is it can do more than its rivals because of the color screen and because of some fast hardware and because of what we call the Boox Super Refresh technology, which actually enables it to keep the e-ink screen nice and clean. That is a new development for e-ink, whereas before with e-ink you couldn't help but get lots of what we call ghosting, the image retention. As you change things, it would either need to do a full refresh, so wipe out the entire screen like that and then print that screen again, or you would put up with every single time you moved something, you'd have the ghost of whatever was there before sitting on the screen before. But what they've actually managed to do on the latest generation of Boox devices is add a GPU which can clear out the white space and get rid of that ghosting. Obviously, you've got none of those issues on the really nice looking IPS screen here on the iPad. It really is an attractive screen to use. So because of that, the latest generation of Boox devices, they're incredibly balanced devices that you can use a full range of Android apps on. But of course, it isn't coming close to the quintessential jack of all trades that the iPad is. You can do so much on here, including full Adobe apps, full Microsoft suite. And although you could install Adobe drawing apps on here, I don't think there is an Android Fresco, but you could install Adobe drawing apps or any drawing app of your choice here on this device. The pen is only optimized to work in the built-in Boox apps themselves, and that's because of the way it handles the e-ink refresh. So if you want something that actually looks like it's printing the stroke as you make the stroke, i.e. with what we call low latency, you need to be working in the official Boox apps. There are very few third-party apps that handle that well. You can, however, and I do, use full Microsoft apps here, and that is working really nicely here on the Note Air3 C, or indeed on the Tab Ultra C Pro as well. The question is, are either of them the master of any one of them? And I guess this comparison does make more sense now than either Boox versus Remarkable, which is a bit of a classic comparison, or the iPad versus Remarkable, which again is still a popular search term. I would say that these two are closer together than either of them are to a Remarkable. Now I'll talk briefly about the Remarkable and if that appeals to you towards the end of this video. So I'm going to talk about notes, and Apple now comes with this freeform notes app, which is really quite good. It's a sort of infinite canvas scrollable space that you can actually add notes and work with images, etc. This is certainly a powerful note-taking app. And the Apple Pencil is super quick. That's because the way it works is via Bluetooth, as well as some pressure sensitivity on the screen as well. The Bluetooth senses the pen's position and relative to the screen, as well as it having an electromagnetic aspect, which is powered. So that's the charge from the side here, and which is picked up by the grid on the screen as well. So you've got incredible accuracy and incredible low latency. The Wacom EMR, however, which is on all of the Boox tablets, is for me the absolute gold standard of stylus technology. Why is Wacom EMR so good? Well, there's no charging at all needed, and that makes the pen lighter. However, it manages to be ultra low latency. And with this generation of Boox tablet, we're talking sub 20 milliseconds latency. So it's latency that you just don't notice. Essentially how it works is there's a grid of wires here on the screen, and that makes a little electromagnetic field. When the pen comes close to that, the solenoid in the tip of the pen actually starts to generate a current, and that current has a magnetic field of its own, which generates a sort of cone-shaped magnetic field, which allows that grid to sense when the pen is coming close to the screen, when it's touching the screen, how hard it's pressing against the screen, and what angle it's pressing on the screen as well. It's incredibly clever, and it does that without having to charge at all. EMR can do other things, like it can have buttons on it, although this particular pen doesn't. Boox do have pens with an eraser on the back. And the note-taking app has really clever features, for instance, Smart Scribe, where you can just scribble out like this. And don't get me wrong, there are clever features on the Apple Pencil. For example, the double tap to change between the eraser. It's not just good, it's excellent, but I'm much more at home with a Wacom EMR stylus. I think it's better. For me, one of the biggest differences, writing on the iPad screen always feels a little bit tappy, like writing on glass. Whereas even though the top surface of this screen is glass, it manages to retain a much more paper-like feeling. I just think that as you write, bringing up the e-ink capsules is a much closer experience to writing on paper. It's a much more natural way to write. For drawing, well, Boox could absolutely kill this category. It'd be an amazing thing to draw on, especially now they've got color screens here as well, if they would just include a dedicated drawing app. But right now, there's nothing which is as good as, for example, using Adobe Fresco on here, which that's just one choice of the amazing range of drawing apps that you can get on the iPad. And so drawing on the iPad, although it isn't the gold standard, it isn't as good as a dedicated drawing tablet or drawing screen like a Huion or XP Pen or Wacom screen. This is an excellent drawing experience. As I said, it's a jack of all trades, can do everything pretty well. It isn't the very best that you can get. I do really love drawing on e-ink, but I think there's probably a way to go, which will be solved with an excellent app. One thing that I will state though, is that I find the pressure levels too hard here on the iPad. There simply aren't enough brush tools here on the Note Air3 C. You don't get the choice of every color, and there aren't layer blending options, which you get in an app like Adobe Fresco. Although you can install third-party apps, they just don't work as well with the pen. There's just an input lag, which you wouldn't be able to live with. For planning, I've tried returning to the iPad several times for planning, but I just can't seem to love it. I think it's probably too close to a computer in its function, and it's just a bit too much of that too bright screen time. I prefer the e-ink massively. It's just so much closer to the planners that I was used to using. I've tried different apps. For instance, this is planning in PDF Element, but I've also tried Notability and GoodNotes to be my PDF planner. And to some extent, the built-in Apple apps as well, which are perfectly fine. But I always go back, the e-ink is just so much more comfortable for your eyes. And although the Note Air3 C doesn't have the battery performance that a lot of e-ink tablets do, if this is your main use, if planning is your main use, then perhaps have a look at the Note Air3, which is the black and white version. Or of course, one of the many other e-ink tablets that are out there that have amazing battery life. The Note Air3 doesn't have the super refresh technology, so it doesn't do that clearing out the white space thing. The trade-off for that is that you gain amazing battery life. And you're talking about probably 1 or 2 full weeks of using the device on a normal e-ink tablet. The iPad is no slouch for battery performance though, and I've regularly found that I get about 3 days with my use case with it. But that's because as a planner, I'm pulling it in and out of the bag and using it for short amounts of time to jot something down or to read something that I have written down. And that's achievable because of that kind of short and sporadic use. And this particular iPad, certainly this size of it, is a little bit too much to be pulling in and out of your bag for those very short amounts of time, but maybe a mini might work really well for that. However, if you are already in the Apple ecosystem and you use Apple Notes, use things like that on your phone, then I think it's a no-brainer probably to stick with the iPad and have it sync with your already existing ecosystem. But if you find that that's a strain on your eyes, like I'm not enjoying even looking at it right now, my eyes feel like they're resting when they look on this e-ink, I think having an e-ink tablet as well would be amazing for you. I think that you'd get along really well with an e-ink tablet. And lots of us are really hopeful that Apple will bring e-ink iPads. I just doubt that that's going to happen though, especially with their investment in Vision Pro at the minute. An e-ink tablet is the exact opposite to a Vision Pro, really, isn't it? For integrations, we'll both have really great apps, and I think the Apple apps probably just shade it. I think Apple apps do always seem to be that little bit more easy to use than Android apps, although the Android system is better if you're someone who needs to manage files and share them to multiple locations. I just find Apple to be a little bit closed down. When I want to share this out somewhere, I only get the options that Apple chooses to give me, and things like Google Drive is there, but it's buried down here in my More thing, rather than just having a storage app where you can actually just manage your folders like an ordinary person. I just never seem to be able to find anything in this darn thing. But that isn't all the files on my iPad, is it? They just don't give you like an option to see all of the files. Nuisance. I think one of the key integrations for work though is going to be your Microsoft things, and they are great on both of them. For instance, I'm a very big fan of pulling out any of my lessons from my work OneDrive on either of them. Being able to edit the live copy here on the tablets is great. And it's closer than you might think in that area. And lastly, well, reading, and there's just no contest here. If any of you can read for long amounts of time on an iPad, then let me know. It's too heavy, it's too bright, it's just too much really. E-ink is of course amazing for reading. And although you can get a Kindle app here and read away on that, I just don't think you're ever going to enjoy reading on an iPad as much as reading on an e-ink tablet. I think it's about preference, and when I thought through this comparison, the words I prefer kept coming up in my writing. I tried to get rid of them, but it is the case that I prefer using for work the Android e-ink tablet rather than the iPad. It hints at something really key about tech, that there is a best device for you and a best device for me, and they probably aren't going to be the same things. It's pretty much a tie across the use cases that I've discussed here, with the Boox tablet coming out better in the reading and the note-taking side of things, and the integrations and drawing being better on the iPad. But I think honestly, if I was to go wider than that, I think that the iPad would win out overall. I think you can do more on an iPad than you can do on an e-ink tablet. But for this purely professional use case, I think the Note Air3 C will win here. At least it will for me. The iPad is great, but I just can't see it as a work-focused machine. Most professionals are going to prefer using an e-ink tablet and having just one IPS, LED, LCD or OLED screen on their laptop. So you've just got your laptop, and next to it, you've got your e-ink tablet. And I do think that the e-ink is going to be the one you'll prefer for your planner, for your note taker, for your work machine, if you're coming from a paper planner. Whereas if you're expanding from using a planner or notes on your iPhone, or certainly if you live on a Mac, then I think this is probably the way to go for you. And I talked about the validity of this type of comparison at the start. And I think maybe the question is, would I really prefer a laptop or an iPad? And that's perhaps more of a valid question. And I do think that in 2024, you probably do need two machines for work. You probably do need a tablet and your computer. Now that could be an iPad and a desktop computer, or it could be an e-ink tablet and a laptop. It could be a phone and a tablet. There are lots of ways to look at it, and it depends on what workflows you actually need to do. And if you decide that maybe the Note Air3 C isn't for you, then perhaps a more limited e-ink tablet is what you want to look at. Maybe one that is focused on reading, maybe then the Kindle Scribe or the Kobo Ellipse. Or if you want one focused on notes, maybe the Remarkable or the Supernote, and check out my videos and comparisons with those here as well. There is a balance for everyone. But if you came to this video not sure if an iPad was right for you, and you've been enticed by the idea of an e-ink tablet, I can assure you that there is a right e-ink tablet out there for you somewhere. Just have a look around. So finally, I think I've still got more to explore with these two e-ink tablets. And I think that they're going to be the mainstay of the Boox lineup for some time to come. If you do like what you've seen, then buy with confidence. Get ready to scale that learning curve and then be released into a whole new world of focus and productivity with your new e-ink tablet. They're really fabulous. I wouldn't go back.